Dude, big fan of. I actually forgot how much I actually legitimately like Woodford Reserve.
I don't know if I've ever had it. I know I've had some like different whiskeys
Yeah.
throughout the years, but I can't really say what they were. I've just always been a diehard Tennessee sipping whiskey.
Tennessee sipping whiskey.
Oh, hold on. Fine Tennessee sipping whiskey.
Let's fucking go, dude. No, it's good. Actually, I do. It's gonna sound a little off, but I do like a little lime in there. If you get a hint of lime, it actually tastes pretty good.
Yeah, I've gotten that at some places where they put the lime in there with the Diet Coke.
Yeah,
That's like, it's not bad.
with like a Jack and Coke, and they put
right.
like, especially at weddings.
Yeah.
I could do Jack and Cokes all fucking night though at weddings.
Oh, dude, I could drink that shit like water.
Oh God.
But when Lauren and I toured the distillery, and we had this whole guy, he had overalls on. It like the guy was hilarious, right? But anytime he referred to the brand, it was a fine Tennessee sipping whiskey, and he made me take my hat off.
Oh, like, for Jack D.
Oh yeah, he's like, sir, take your hat off and show some respect when I say that.
Fucking love it.
Yeah,
fucking love it.
Lauren and I always joke about it because it was a funny experience.
No, absolutely. Do you ever go down to the distillery down there?
Well, that was at the distillery.
Oh, it was?
Yeah. Dude, have you been?
No, I never been. I've heard like good stories about it. Actually, one of the guys at work was telling me how he went down there because he likes Gentleman Jack.
Yeah.
Because regular Jack is too strong for him. Right.
Okay.
Anyways, but he told, I think, the tour guide that, and the tour guide just ripped him a new one constantly.
That's hilarious.
It is pretty funny.
Dude, it's pretty cool if you guys ever find yourself down in Nashville. Like, just take the day, go do it. Super interesting. Like, I mean, they've been distilling whiskey there forever. You get to go into like see the cave where the natural spring comes out.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Oh yeah, dude, super cool. And I think you have to pay extra for it. I can't remember.
Okay.
But at the end, you do a tasting.
Okay. They do, don't they? They sell like special versions of it too at the distillery, right? Like so, Frank Sinatra or something like that.
Yeah. So Lynchburg is in a dry county.
That's
so they're not allowed to sell whiskey. But there was or just alcohol, period.
The Bible Belt, that's why, right?
What's that?
The Bible Belt, that's why, right?
Yeah, well, it like goes all the way back to Prohibition.
Okay.
They've just never changed it. So what they did is at some point they got the code changed, so they were able to sell special one-off whiskeys. So that's all they sell there is just specialty whiskeys that they run certain times. I mean, half the time it's probably just black label, but it's in a special bottle, so it's a special thing.
Give it to me.
Oh yeah,
I'm sold.
Like, dude, it's cool. They drive. First thing you do is you drive up through the mountains, I guess. And you see the barrel houses, and they take you down. They show you where they fire all the wood to make coal to filter it.
Yep.
Then you go through everything, and the tasting room, is in a old barrel house. It's like one of the first barrel houses. So it's just super old ass barn. But like you sit there waiting for your tour. And like the welcome center, they've got like this big wraparound porch that you could sit on rocking chairs on. And
dude, that sounds badass.
Yeah, dude, it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. We've gone twice. Yeah, we went twice.
I want to go to that one, and I also, if we ever get a chance to go overseas to like Ireland and stuff, I want to do the Jameson distillery and Guinness as well.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Oh, dude, I've heard great things about it.
Yeah. I want to say like Jameson buys their barrels from Jack Daniels.
Do they really?
I don't quote me on that, but I know like Jack Daniels. So it's once they use a barrel, they can never use it again.
Right.
So they sell it to all different sorts of places. There's like people that make wine that buy their barrels.
Yeah, I know that, and I know there's different like breweries that will buy like bourbon barrels, and they'll do different types of styles of beers.
Yeah, right. Speaking of bourbon, that's like another cool thing. So in Kentucky, they have the Bourbon Trail.
Yeah.
You ever heard of it?
Yes.
So it's like doing a wine trail where you go to different wineries, but you just go from like distillery to distillery tasting bourbon.
Isn't like Maker's Mark down there?
Yeah, Maker's Mark, Wild Turkey.
Yeah.
There's a bunch. That's Kentucky's bourbon country.
Have to check that out. We might have to make a little special trip.
Yeah, just go do it.
Oh,
we'll do a live Beyond the Dispatch.
Let's go.
The bourbon distilleries.
Oh God, I can only imagine what would come out of our mouths.
Beyond the dispatch on the Bourbon Trail.
Hammered on the Bourbon Trail. Good luck.
God.
Oh man.
All right, so this is going to be Beyond the Dispatch episode 02.
Dose.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
How I got shot in the face.
That should be, dude. Did you just come up with that, or you've been thinking about it?
I was not prepared for that one at all,
dude. It's a good one.
I was trying to think how to spin your episode name. I'm like, well, we'll just go with that one.
Oh, I got shot in the face. It's a good one.
But let's start before you got shot in the face. So it's going to be kind of hard for me to interview you for, like, you guys that don't know. I've known this kid since kindergarten.
Long time.
It was 96. We met each other.
Oh God, yeah. That's when we moved from Michigan, Holland, Michigan. We went to the apartments in Mokina, and then we moved into our house.
Yeah.
And then that's when I met you.
Yeah, and I moved in October of 96 and saw you over there playing with my neighbor.
That's right, yeah. I forgot about her.
Yeah. So when she introduced us, in a way, I guess.
You remember that?
I remember you were like playing in her backyard and she like hollered career paths they choose, right?
Right.
So I want to start and talk about that a little bit.
For sure. So my upbringing, I come from like a big Italian family. My mom's 100% Italian. My dad's Irish, German. So I've always been super close with my family. So like Sunday dinners, we would either go to like my aunt's house, or they would come to our house. And I grew up with an older brother, older sister. I was the baby of the family. And then I had two cousins, Andrew and Allie, that were extremely close. So like they were additional like brother and sister. Like I don't see them as cousins. And anytime when anyone like asks about them, I'm like, oh, my brother or my sister. Like I don't call them
right
cousins. Right. And like our kids will say Andrew, like Uncle Andrew or Auntie Allie. They don't say, Andrew Allie.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So very close. My grandfather was pretty much like the matriarch of our family. My mom's side, my papa, Dominic, his namesake. And I feel like I got a lot of who I am from him, from my mom, and from my dad. And then from my Uncle Randy, and my aunt. We call her Sissy, but she's Aunt Andrea, but it just sounds weird coming out of my mouth.
I didn't even know her name was Andrea for a long time. I thought it was just Sissy.
Just Sissy. So they really kind of like developed and like molded me into the person I am today. Very caring person. That's who they were. They were very caring.
Right.
My grandfather, he would give you the shirt off his back. He was just like a man of men, right? Where hardworking, he would do anything for you, for his family. If he cared about you, he would do anything for you. But at the same time, like you would never want to cross him. He also turned into a very scary human being.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And then my dad, I got a lot from him as well, where he worked multiple jobs. My mom was more of a stay-at-home mom, had 3 kids. My dad made maybe $50,000 a year, if at best, and then would work side jobs. So anytime I would see my dad would be on the weekends, where I would actually go with him to these side jobs and help him paint, do drywall, carpentry. I mean, my dad was like a jack of all trades, which he learned from being in the steel mills and stuff.
Yeah, I remember that all throughout your childhood. It was, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I got to go work with my dad.
Right. Remember when we went down to Florida, sophomore year of high school, I think it was.
Oh yeah.
I paid for that while working side jobs with my dad.
Yeah.
They're like, you can't, we don't have the money to send you. And I was like, well, can I use my money from the job? And my dad's like, yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually found out later on that the guy that I was helping my dad work for, stiffed my dad and never paid him. And my dad did a bunch of work for him. Like we installed wood flooring. We did a bunch of stuff for him. And this guy screwed my dad over. So he didn't have the heart to be like, Jesus, I can't pay you. So my parents actually, we didn't have the money, but they figured it out and gave me money to come down to Florida with you.
Kind of like the way of the world back then. Figure it out. But it was so much easier to figure it out back then.
And you think back, you're like, God, I was a selfish little SOB, man.
I think we all feel that way at times.
Which you don't really realize at the time, but like,
Yeah, right.
you
You're
know,
just being a kid, man. You don't know.
right. And when you become a parent, you realize a lot about yourself and your childhood, and you really appreciate some of those things.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, that was pretty much my childhood. You know, running around the neighborhood with you, playing Army, doing all that stuff. You know, burros, played football growing up.
So, what do you think are some things that might have shaped you from your childhood? Like, I know we kind of talked about that a little bit, but like, can you think of maybe some like specific instances that kind of like shaped you into the person that makes a good officer or the person that can come back from the things you've dealt with?
I mean, honestly, I think it is the people that I was surrounded by, truthfully.
Yeah.
And you want to break it down to like brass tacks, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Like you, my family, I think that's what really kind of shaped me to who I am. Also, I mean, not a lot of people know, but like I had like a learning disability too growing up. So like reading, writing, all that stuff was really big or hard for me to do. I mean, I don't know why, but like it never interested me. I never wanted to care about it in a sense. So that was something I battled a lot with growing up, going to school. You're super embarrassed about it. I don't really talk about it a lot now, especially publicly. And now I'm talking about it on a podcast, but I mean, that's really what really kind of shaped me of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Because kids are cruel, right?
Oh, yeah.
You go to school hating it. And I hated going to school because I had to go through different classes that I didn't want to be in.
Right.
Because, I mean, at the same time, it's my lazy ass should have just buckled down and got after it, and I didn't.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you probably learned this stuff differently, and it just wasn't connected.
100%.
Like
so my
classes,
brain, my brain works a little differently. So if I read something, it kind of gets all jumbled up. I had to take my time to like, all right, focus.
Yeah, right.
But honestly, I think a lot of that contributes to who I am now and where I've come from. So that playing Army with you, I mean, honestly, that really gave me the bug as a kid. Like, 6 years old, we're doing stick guns like constantly, every single second. Like we would literally camp out in your yard.
Oh yeah.
And like have a fire. We would have camp. Like we would dress up, like all that stuff. My dad's old.
Foxholes.
Yeah, man. So we would do all that all the time. So I think that really did it as well. But then also my family and like how they were very close knit, hardworking. So I think that really kind of developed me to the career path. And then too, my dad was also a military police officer. So that like drove me.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. I think your dad carried that through childhood. He seemed like not one of those guys you wanted to cross. I know I crossed him once and I didn't like it.
My dad's very quiet. He's a quiet guy until you piss him off.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I put a golf club
on your
bike tire.
Just us being fucking kids, dude.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to the next point is like your career, right? Like you didn't get out of high school and go right to being a cop.
No. So we talked about this on the last podcast or episode where I originally wanted to be a firefighter. So I thought to myself, I originally wanted to be a firefighter, but then I also wanted to serve in the military. I always had that yearning to give back to my country. And
right.
I mean, from all the World War II movies we'd watch and play G.I. Joe, stuff like that. So it's like that was like ingrained in me. And I think, I first started out wanting to go to the Marines, freshman or no, I wasn't a freshman. It was a junior or senior year. And I applied, or I didn't apply. I like inquired on the website and they sent me like a packet.
You just really enjoyed the taste of crayons.
That too, yeah. Red's my favorite color.
You would have fit right in.
It tastes like cherry. So they sent me a packet, and then that's when like my mom got it at the house, and she lost it, man.
Oh, I bet.
Lost it, crying, screaming, and I buckled down. I was like, I'm going to go.
Now, if it was your brother, she would have just been like, please get out.
Get out, Nick. Yeah. Probably to this day.
Right.
So, that was, I just kicked that camera. That was an idiot move.
That was me.
Oh, was it you? Oh, I
thought
it was me because I kicked my leg out.
Yeah.
So yeah, she cried. She tried to recruit my grandpa into like talking me down, my papa, and he picked me up one day in his Tahoe. I remember that day, and we drove around, and he's like, "You can't go." He tried to talk me out of it, and even then, I would never like defy him, but even then, I was like, "No, I'm going."
Yeah, right.
And we left that conversation where it was junior year. And I remember because then I got a tattoo.
Of course.
My mom was like, you can get a tattoo if you don't go to the Marines. That's what it was. It was the shitty tattoo I have on my back. Jesus. And yep, stupid. But yeah, so that, that's how that whole thing kicked off. And I never let it go because then it transitioned to when after high school, like I was doing the EMT stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to become a firefighter. And I was like, I still want to go to the Army. And then it kind of started transitioning into military police officer. I reached out to the recruiter about military police officer. And I kind of was thinking about the promise I made my mom. Like, I can't do that. I'm like, what else can I do where I can still serve my country and, appease everybody else at the same time?
Right.
And I wasn't too keen on like taking somebody's life, right? Unless I had, unless you're put into that position. So I was like,
right.
The Coast Guard. So I looked into the Coast Guard and saw that what their mission responsibilities were, and they had like a wide variety of everything. We're just search and rescue. You can be, a part of the science, research up in north. You go on a polar roller, all that stuff, and you do drug interdiction. And then I think they started like a new rate, which was maritime law enforcement. I'm like, this is perfect. This is right up my alley. This is where I need to be.
Yeah.
So I talked to a recruiter, got hooked up, and long story short, they were kind of like not in like a hiring freeze, but they weren't taking a lot of people at the time.
Right.
So I was like on a waiting list, and I finally I would like email my recruiter almost every single day. Like I want to go. I'm here. If someone drops out, call me. I'll go. And I had to break all that news to my mom. She cried. And my dad, she tried to recruit my dad to like, hey, let's talk him down. But my dad's like, I can't, like, what do you want me to do? He's like, I served as well.
Yeah, right.
He goes, what do you want me to tell the kid? Like, oh, don't do what I did.
Yeah, yeah.
So it all worked out. My mom kind of, finally came around to it. Talked to a recruiter, went through MEPS, did all that fun stuff, walk like a duck in my underwear in a room full of dudes.
It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah. Looking for scoliosis. And
when the old German guy tells you to drop your drawers and bend over.
Oh, dude, it was an old lady. I remember she's like, spread your cheeks. And this is weird. All right, I'm doing it.
Dude, I had like a 90-year-old German guy that I'm pretty sure was probably in Germany during some times.
999.
Yeah. He's like, all right, drop your drawers, bend over, spread your cheeks. And I was like,
how's my butthole looking?
Where's this going?
How many buttholes do you think they see a day?
Oh, God, I couldn't even imagine.
Countless buttholes.
Do you think they rate buttholes?
Oh, dude. Just like
this one was bleached.
Yeah, this is when we talk about calls. They rate buttholes.
Guys, I saw the hairiest butthole today.
They probably see some weird stuff, dude.
Right.
So, yeah, I did that. That was in 2012 was when I actually went in about the end of summer. I remember, I think right around August, I went to Cape May, New Jersey, went through basic training there. And honestly, from the research I've done, the Coast Guard basic training is actually fairly mentally difficult. Physically wasn't that bad compared to like being in football and all that stuff. But mentally, they screwed with you hard. I mean, I remember one day like looking at a wall for like hours, like literally my face up to a wall like this. And I think they just ran out of things for us to do. So they're like, let's just throw them in the squad bay for like an hour or two before we have to go to the next evolution. And we'll just have them look at a wall and we'll come back and check on them periodically throughout the day. So
can you describe the texture of that wall?
Dude, I remember every indent on that brick wall. That, or like we picked up and put down a pen for like 45 minutes. Dude, you want to talk about your hamstrings cramping up? You pick it up and put down a pen constantly, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, or like you'd scream at a boat. Like there's like an old school like lifeboat they had you like scream at for like 30 minutes. Your throat's raw, you can't even talk. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a good experience. And I remember talking to my parents. They're like, you really grew up when you went there and afterwards in comparison. And I think I needed it.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people need.
Oh, man. Discipline.
I definitely remember like the change in you when you came back.
Oh, different
you went
person.
from being a kid to like a young adult.
Yeah.
When you're done,
You don't have a choice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But
exactly.
I think that also kind of like put me on a path of no return of career, with going in law enforcement and stuff.
It teaches you that like discipline and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if it is the Coast Guard.
Yep. So they, dude, I had a great time. Like I honestly,
No, I know you did.
do not regret it whatsoever. I always think sometimes myself, like I should have went Army, and like, cause I always like, oh man, I always want to do like special forces, like Rangers or anything like that. Never did, but you know, you always think to yourself, like I should have done that. But I mean, I'm not upset about the path I took. You know, we did drug interdiction in the Caribbean, so they ask you where you want to go, and you pick different regions of the country, and you tell them like afloat or landside. And I think I said like landside, Florida. And I got my orders, and I was on a cutter, like one of the biggest cutters you can be on, which is almost like equivalent to a Navy frigate. It was like 478 feet long, or is it 300? Don't quote me.
Jamie,
it's been a while.
Shit, I'm right here.
Get your phone out. So South Carolina, I was stationed on the Gallatin, which was built in like 1965-ish, 8-ish. So before smoke detectors were invented.
That's always good.
Oh, dude, packed full of asbestos, I'm sure.
Did you make sure to lick the paint?
Oh, dude, I didn't try to touch anything there because
it tastes like lead.
It tastes like lead or asbestos, or the lead ingots there, or whatever, the ballast that grind up, and now it's giving everyone cancer.
Yeah, right. So yeah, you kind of like segued there. I was going to get into this. I know the story, but tell me about your first time out to sea.
Oh, so I was not deployed, but I was stationed in South Carolina. I think it was right around October when I arrived, whenever Hurricane Sandy happened. So I get there, I'm there for like maybe a weekish, give or take, and they're like, we're shipping out, and I'm pretty sure the boat just got fixed. I can't remember exactly, but they've been down for a while. The engines were all messed up on it. They haven't been deployed. So like, hey, Hurricane Sandy's coming. The engines are good. We're shipping out. And I'm like, oh God, what's gonna happen? Dude, I've never been so sick in my whole entire life. If you ever been seasick, times it by 20, because we were in Hurricane Sandy. Little backstory: if you ever seen the Pirates of the Caribbean, the boats, the old school pirate boats that they have in the movie, a captain took his boat out with, I think, a crew. I don't know exactly how many people, but him and his wife were there, and they sunk. So I think one of the Coast Guard helicopters had picked the crew up, or whoever he took with him, but then his wife and him were missing. So then we were doing search patterns off the coast of North Carolina for like 2 to 3 days. I've never puked so much in my entire life is when that, dude, I lost like I was already going into basic training. I was right around like 210. I came out at like 185 with my boots on.
Yeah,
and that's right. Dude, those boots were heavy. Those Bates boots are heavy. So I didn't have an ounce of fat on me. I lost even more weight being underway, dude, because I would not stop puking. Like you could literally stand up in the hallway almost like at a 45-degree angle and not fall over. I used to put your boots underneath your rack so you don't roll out in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And then they designed the boat with the frame where it would bend. So like these steel beams are going across the boat, they designed them where there's like a little notch, and they would bend every time the boat would bend.
Okay.
And you could go up in, I think it was right around the aviation office, and you could see like it almost touching, and you're like, I'm gonna die on this thing.
That's like amazing engineering that they designed that much
Dude.
flex into that hole.
Oh my, we took a beating. And that's when I started breaking in as like to drive the boat. So like I'm on this little stick and I'm holding on with one hand and I'm holding on the stick and I'm breaking in, and it's like in the middle of the night, you're going up, like all you see is the front of the boat go up, and then it just slams back down, and like a wall of water comes over the boat, and I'm like trying not to puke. And I look over at the guy next to me who was training me, and I'm like, you got to take this. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have to take this right now. And I ran off to the side of the bridge, and I just started yakking all over the boat. Dude, I was in the rack for like 2 days.
God. So the funniest thing about that, just quick segue, I don't know what it is, but I have the weirdest urge to be on a like decent sized ship in a storm like that. I would love to do it. I think it'd just be so cool. Dude,
imagine the Bering Sea. You ever see the movie?
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, that's exactly what it's like.
I want a bigger boat, though.
Oh, a huge boat. It's not even big enough because even then it still sucks.
Yeah. Like, dude, you look at like footage from, what was it, the end of World War II when that task force ran into that typhoon in the Pacific.
Oh, dude.
like they hit waves that ripped the front of a cruiser clear off, like an armored cruiser, right? Lost the bow of the ship.
That reminds me of like being on Lake Michigan on a 45, just holding on for dear life.
Dude, so I like talking about Hurricane Sandy. Like I remember when that made it out this way. Like I was working on the privates, driving down Lakeshore Drive, and it was getting flooded out from the waves, you know?
Yeah.
But we're getting off track.
Anyways, so yeah, so I did. So I was in South Carolina for 2 years. We did drug interdiction in the Caribbean. Our big thing was cocaine. I mean, I still remember the captain playing. Can't remember what it was. It's some old school song about cocaine. And every time we got a bus, he would play it. And we would usually get like 2 to 3 busts every time we go out.
Was it possibly Eric Clapton Cocaine?
Yes, probably 100%.
I think that's the name of the song.
100%. So I mean, it was cool, man. Like the first bus I got, we literally made a throne of cocaine, and I sat and I took pictures. I was like, "This is the best thing."
I remember getting those pictures.
Yep. And then someone, I don't know who it was, I don't know who did it, but they took the helm. It was like a fishing vessel with, I think it was Switzerland. Like they were claiming Switzerland as their home nation.
Okay.
And someone took off the steering wheel as a memento, which we never found out who it was. But then we were steering with like vice grips, and I remember getting seasick on that thing too, where I'm like steering with vice grips, and some guy comes up to me, he's like, "Hey man, you want a sandwich?" I'm like, he's like eating a sandwich in my face. I'm like, "Get that out of my fucking face right now before I throw up all over you." He's like, "All right." I'm sorry. He's like, "You want to take a rest?" I'm like, "No, dude. Like this is the only place where I'm not gonna throw up at." So I'm like, "I will drive." I think I drove almost the whole night, drive that boat, because we boarded that boat, got all the drugs off of it, and we had to hold on to it, and we had to try to bring it back to port for evidence.
Okay.
But something happened to it where it started taking on water, and we had to dump it, and then we just had a nice little gun axe with it and shot it with the cannons and the 50s. Cool. Yeah, it was a great time. Yeah, so we drove that thing for hours.
Happened.
Yes, something happened to it. I don't know if I'm at liberty to say what happened to it, but we took on a lot of water. And then we didn't have to babysit that thing anymore. But yeah, man, those are the good old days. And then port calls. Dude, the port calls were a great time. Honduras, Roatan, Panama. We went to Cuba, which is horrible of a place to be.
Is it?
Just everything's dead. Like they have a golf course there. I don't know if it's still there or not. But they give you like clubs, balls, and then they give you like a carpet, like turf carpet, where you put it down, then you put your ball on top of it, and then you hit it off the turf carpet to go find your ball, pick up your ball, put it, just
Jesus,
a vicious cycle. But yeah, I was there for 2 years, and then we decommed our boat, and I think we sold it to Nigeria.
Yeah, it's serving in the Nigerian Navy.
The Nigerian Navy. So then they came on board, and we had to teach them how to do our jobs.
Yeah, right.
And I just remember those banana cream dress uniforms they had. And they looked like all like those like Russian and North Korean generals, and they had all the medals and stuff.
Yeah, right. They've got breast full of ribbons.
So I think they call it the Thunder now.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they do. I think I looked it up.
The Thunder.
The Thunder. I think they have like 2 or 3 of our cutters of that like 378 class, and they're all called like different variations of the Thunder.
I just imagine some Nigerian admiral like in combat. He's like, "We need the Thunder.
Send the Thunders." Would it be multiple?
Bring the Thunder.
It would be plural for Thunders.
Yeah. Bring the Thunders. There's multiple?
There's multiple. Yeah. So did that. And then when they decommed the boat, I talked to a yeoman. I think it was a yeoman or an SK. And they asked where I wanted to go. And I told them closest to Chicago as you can get me.
Poor choice.
Poor choice. I should have went to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Or stayed in Florida. Hawaii. Then I was stationed in the south side of Chicago in Calumet Park. So if you've ever been there, check it out. It's quite sketchy.
Yeah, cool area.
Yeah, we'd wake up and go to like the boat building or the maintenance facility, and there'd be like new bullet holes in there, or like a piece of lead laying on the ground from them just shooting.
Yeah, well, those things happen in Chicago.
Great fishing, though, I heard.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah, there's fish shacks all over the place there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But
so, yeah.
Then you did what, another 2 years there at Cal Harbor?
Yeah, so then my last 2 years at Cal Harbor, which was a great time, man. I mean, I met one of my really good friends, Kellens and Andrew. Him and I are still close to this day. He became a canine handler down in Pinellas County. I mean, kid was a savage. I mean, got after it. Great cop. And then he stepped away and now has his own dog training company. Stepped away because of me.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think we're going to take a quick break. Let's do an intermission and get back at it here in a couple minutes.
Absolutely.
So let's transition to when you were getting out of the Coast Guard. Did you have kind of like a direction, right? Like how did that look when you got out of the Coast Guard?
So as I was leaving, I needed like an exit plan, right? Where I was like, where do I go from here? Because you didn't really just kind of like we're in the position we're at now where we're kind of looking for a new career path, right?
Yeah.
Where we need additional training. So I didn't have that. So I'm like, what am I going to do in the real world? What's going to transfer over from the Coast Guard to the real world? I'm like, am I going to do like a boat towing business or something? Right. So I was like, this is stupid. So I started testing for police departments right around, I think I had like a year left, maybe a little more. And I started testing for police departments like Will County, some other like southern smaller departments. I tested for my current department, Romeoville. And then I even tested for Chicago Fire as well. They did like a special military testing.
Right.
So I tested there. I actually did really well. I mean, I don't know about really well, but I passed because they don't really tell you. And it was the dude.
We won't get into that. We could get into that test.
I'll give you a little sneak peek of the test. It was one of the easiest tests I've ever taken in my whole entire life.
Oh my God.
It's like firefighter A and firefighter B go into a house. They're talking to a patient. Firefighter A says XYZ, firefighter B says XYZ, and they even give you like their he, she, and they're like, is firefighter A a male or a female?
Yeah, right. My favorite were the spelling portions.
Yeah.
Where they actually spelled the word somewhere in the test.
100%.
That you had to spell. You're like, oh, okay, that's easy. And they also had Ebonics spellings of the words.
Yes.
For every question, which I was like, that seems off, but okay.
Yes, it was one of the easiest tests I've taken.
That whole test is just, it's so frustrating.
Frustrating.
Because it used to be so merit based.
Yes.
And like it was like back in the day, it was actually a pretty difficult test as far as like math, reading, writing, engineering, and not engineering, but like mechanical knowledge, we'll say.
Not even
whatever
close.
they call it on the test. But yeah, no, it's just like, can you spell to the level of a third grader?
Yeah, 100%. So that's exactly what it was. I found out that I passed it, and I was 18.5. So what they do for like the military testing is they put you between numbers, and it's a lottery system, right? So they put you in and they just scramble it up. So I was at 12, and they already passed my number. So I was like, I'm 100% getting called.
Yeah.
And I did, but not until later on when I was actually at my current police department. And I looked at my email and it's like, hey, come to orientation. And it was that day. I'm like, I already screwed up. I missed it all. But I guess it was all for a reason.
Yeah.
Things happen in the funniest ways. I was destined to be shot in the face.
Yeah, I was going to say interesting reason, but
yeah. So I mean, that was my process of getting out of the Coast Guard. I went on a radio station. Do you remember this?
No, I don't.
Yeah. So my mom sent me something, and it was
it Sex Talk?
Dude, I wish. Is it Sex Talk with what's her name? Sue. Yes.
Yeah. Or you had Love Line?
Yes, I was going to say Love Line. No. So my mom sent me something. It was like Boots to something. It was a program to assist military members transitioning out of the military into the civilian world. They would have you on their show. It was Rambling Ray and Lisa Dent.
Oh, really? Okay.
And they would have you on, and you talk about your qualifications, all that stuff. It was a really cool experience. And they have you go into their studio. You meet everyone, you talk to everyone, and then you film your episode. It was really cool, and they put my stuff out there. So it was like, I think a week later is when they aired my episode.
Yeah.
And I didn't have, again, zero qualifications.
Right, exactly.
I was like, I will, whatever job is out there, I'll take. Construction, whatever it is, I'll put my boots on, I'll go to work. I don't care, because I had a townhome at this time and I needed to pay for a mortgage, and I hadn't been engaged to Alyssa, and I was like, how am I going to pay for a wedding? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? So I was panicking. Well, I did the episode. It went well, and I had someone reach out to me, and they did construction. They did like more of like a millwright based, which millwrights are just like a jack of all trades. They do like lifting, they do installing, stuff like that. So if you ever see like the food commercials where how it's made, it's like that. So like a bunch of assembly lines, Nestle, I think they make the Baby Ruth bar, and you know how it shows you how to go through each process. It goes from this carousel to this carousel to this dunker. That's what millwrights did. Our job was to like install these assembly lines.
Yeah.
So they reached out to me and asked if I was interested, and I took the job as assistant project manager. I had zero experience. I mean, I had some construction experience with my dad and stuff like that, but not to that.
Managing projects.
Not even close. Yeah. So I went on like YouTube. I was learning how to do the job on YouTube. I would order books off of Amazon, ship it to my house. I was reading how to be a project manager.
Project manager for dummies.
Dude, 100%. And I was literally, I even Googled like, what do they wear? Because I didn't know what they wore. So like I had bought all these khakis and stuff like that just to do this stupid job. I had no clue what I was doing.
You showed up day one in like a khakis and a polo, and guys were like, oh, God.
100%. They probably hated me.
Yeah.
But, I made up for it with just drive. I was a grinder back then, man. I mean, still, I don't know about anymore.
Back then.
Yeah. So I just, sheer determination is how I got through that job, and being organized. So, I mean, change orders. I learned everything on the fly, self-taught. This guy who hired me taught me a bunch of stuff too. And I made best friends with like the superintendent. So whoever the union guy was on the job, who's like literally, those guys are the brainchilds. Those dudes know what they're doing. They know how to do both sides of getting things done, what needs to be a change order, what doesn't. And I just would go up to the saltiest guy, even though if he was rude to me or not, but they usually were all pretty good, great guys. And I'd be like, just teach me. I'm not here to boss you by any means. Look at me as I'm here to assist you to do your job.
Right, exactly.
And I think in a certain way they respected that.
Oh, for sure.
Some young kid coming in telling them what to do. Not a chance. You tell me what you need to make your job easier, and I'll make it happen. You need this, you need that, you need this box here, you need that box here. Like, get the tools they need, the equipment they need to get the job done, and I'll get it done for you.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what you want. Like, when you're in that industry, you get that guy that walks in and he doesn't have a scuff on his hard hat.
Right.
Like, shoes are shined. You're like, oh, look at this jamoke, and like,
right.
The guy walks up to you and, you're supposed to do it this way. And it's like, buddy, get out of here.
Right. Exactly. So you tell me what you need done, and I would go to bat for them too. So if they screwed us over in a certain way, like I would go to, if we were the subcontractor, I would go to the general contractor and be like, what's going on here? You told us to set it. We set the equipment. Now it needs to be moved. Like, this will be a change order.
Yeah. Right.
So I would try to go to bat for them. I also didn't know what I was doing. So that, I think I did that job for almost a year, and I did pretty decent. I mean, the guys who would quote the job, they had it down pat. So I couldn't really fail at the same time. But I mean, man, I was going to PA. I went to a job down in Texas where this is before Zin and all that stuff was made, and they were kind of looking for an alternative to dip.
Okay.
And this guy would take the hairs off of corn, and they would like chop it up real fine, and they would use that for dip.
I've used that stuff before.
Yeah. So
it's not the same.
It's not the same. No. So this guy was with a partner. I don't know what happened or transitioned or transpired with that, but we literally did like an over the night haul out of all of their equipment in one area, took it all out in one night, and it took like 24 hours. Like, we worked through the night and brought it to another separate location so they can start. And the guy,
that sounds like a shady divorce.
Dude, it was.
What the fuck?
I left you the coffee table. Good luck.
Yeah, right.
The coffee table and the dog that's like 15 years old.
What manufacturing plant? I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So I did that.
We never made anything here.
Yeah. So I did that, and I tested for Romeoville back when I was in the Coast Guard, and I actually tested very high on the list. So I thought I was getting called. I didn't get called for like almost a year and a half later.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like in limbo, and that's when they reached out to me before I went down to Texas. And Norm Long, shout out Norm Long, great guy. He hooked me up because I went in for an interview with the deputy chief who later became the chief. And he, after the interview, he goes, I need your boss's number because I needed to talk to him about like references and stuff. And my face like went pale white. My face dropped. I'm like, you can't do that. He's like, looked at me like I was crazy. Like, you can't tell me, you can tell me what to do. But I panicked because if I didn't pass, because you know how it is to go through becoming a police officer. You have to go all these steps. You have to go through medical. You have to go through psych. You have to do this. You have to do that just to pass the polygraph.
Right.
So I'm like, if I fail one of these steps, I'm screwed. And they know I was looking for another job.
Exactly.
So I panicked and I told him that. And I was like, listen, deputy chief, like, I think he was a commander at the time. Or was he deputy chief? I can't remember. I think he was DC at the time. I was like, this is why. And he goes, well, you need to make a decision if this is what you want to do or not, because I still need to talk to your boss. So Norm Long was, his title wasn't project manager. It should have been, because he was running all the Chicago jobs. But I think his title was superintendent. But any Chicago job in this area, he took care of.
Okay.
So eventually, when I was trained up and stuff, I really just worked under him. Whenever he needed done, I took care of. Like, I would go to the job sites. I would take care of the job sites. I would go out, bring equipment that he wanted me to do, or go to this and sit there. If they needed something, I took care of it, make sure they got what they needed to make sure all the Chicago jobs were running smooth. And I go up to Long one day, and I'm like, hey, man, listen. I got an offer from Romeoville Police Department, and they want to talk to my boss. And if I give them to my current boss, like, it could turn out bad for me.
Yeah,
He goes, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. He goes, he's like, you have to take this job, because one of his family members was a police officer in Joliet. And he goes, you will be doing yourself a disservice if you do not take this job because of the pension, all that stuff. He's like, you need to take this job. He's like, that you don't belong here. Not in a mean way. Excuse me. But like, he's like, this is where you need to be for your for your family. So he hooked me up, man. Like, I was like, I'm going to give you the deputy chief's number. Can you call him for me? And he did. And he gave me a great reference. He talked very highly of me. That dude really hooked me up. And I still talk to that guy to this day. Love that man.
Yeah.
Love that man. He also got me shot in the face. So then I left that construction company and went into law enforcement from there.
What year was that about?
Oh man, that had to have been 2016 going into 2017, because I remember I was at the Chrysler plant and I was always on the phone and I was like pushing, like, hey, get me into this next, can you get to this academy class? And I missed that academy class, and they pushed me later on to like April.
Yeah. So speaking of academy, where did you end up going for academy? Does Romeoville do like an in-house, or how does that work in like this?
No, so Police World, they send to other academies. Down south to, I think, Bloomington. I can't remember what it's called. TDI. I can't remember.
It's probably the one. I've got a buddy that's doing that. I want to say he's in Bloomington right now.
Bloomington, yeah. So there's different academies. Romeoville loves to send people to the Triton College, which is the Cook County Academy.
Okay.
But if there's not spots, they'll look elsewhere. But Triton and the Cook County Academy is very military, paramilitary, right? So that's where I went. I went to Triton in Maywood.
Yeah. How long was the academy?
It was, I think at the time, 13-ish weeks. I know they're always adding on. Like, we need to make this longer. We need to make this longer.
Right. They've always got somewhere to improve.
Right. So I think I went in right around, I went in right around like May 25th or April 25th was my sign date, first day. And then I don't think I graduated till August, end of summer.
Okay. So based on like, you went through a basic training with the Coast Guard. How did that academy compare to
not even close? So if you've ever been through a basic training, you dread it because of the ass whooping you're about to receive. So all I kept thinking of was like, this is going to be miserable.
Yeah. This
is going to be miserable. And then I get there and yeah, they beat the hell out of us like the first few days, which is fine. I was fine with it. But when you were actually in the classroom, which was nice. So when you were in the classroom, you could relax but I was already like parade, like, you know, like when you were in the basic training, your heels are together, you're at a 45-degree angle, your hands are on your lap.
Right.
Fully fingers extended, you're on your lap and you're sitting like this at attention.
Right.
So I was like that for like the first few days. And then we'd be in this class and they were teaching you stuff and everyone's like relaxed. Like the main instructor would come in, joke with us, leave. But then if we were out of class and we were doing something and someone like would joke around, you would get your butt whooped.
Yeah.
So it was cool. I fully bought in, and that's just me, I guess. Like I want the full experience. Give it to me. So I bought in. Like if it was the workouts, I was trying hard. If it was DT, I was trying hard. I didn't want to cheat myself.
Yeah, right.
In a sense. But the academy was great. I liked it. The lead instructor I wasn't a huge fan of. I won't say his name.
Yeah.
But I was not a fan of him. He actually got hurt during, I think like the first 3 weeks of our academy. And then another instructor took over, Hartsfield. He actually lived in Romeoville. I really liked Hartsfield. He's like one of those like good old dudes. Worked for county for a long time. I'm pretty sure he's still in the academy. I don't know if he's not to this date, but awesome dude. Big Krav Maga guy.
So like, with the instructors, did they come from different backgrounds? Were they mostly all Cook County guys?
It was all Cook County guys.
Okay.
Yeah, so Cook County was running the academy. So we usually what they do is they have a Cook County class in with us as well with like the other police departments, but they didn't have it or they were on a hiring freeze. I can't remember, but they had a class before us that had Cook County. And then they always say that usually if you have Cook County in your class, it's a lot harder. But it was just us. So we had one classroom, and it was just the Cook County academies with a bunch of municipalities. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't say it.
Municipalities.
Yes. So, like us, Franklin Park, all that stuff.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it was cool.
So, a question I was going to ask you, but
you lost it.
Oh,
yeah. So, just the basics. First few days, you had to earn to wear your uniform, and you had an academy uniform. So you had to be business dress. I heard beforehand to buy a bunch of stuff that you won't use again because you sweat in it and all that stuff. So I went to Walmart and bought like I bought like dress shoes from Walmart.
Yeah, like the cheapest shit you could find.
Dude. Yeah, because the first day they go through all your gear. So you bring your cars there. For us, we had to go to our police department made this happen where you go grab a squad of their decision and then you inspect it and then you go to the academy.
Okay.
So I had to wake up at like almost 2:00 in the morning to go from my house to the PD, whoever was with me at the time. There was another officer from Romeoville that went with us at the time, and we would get together and then we would drive our squad there. So the first day they would go through all of your stuff, and this was remind me of being in the Coast Guard. So you had a list of stuff you had to bring, and they would check it, and then they would inspect your vehicle. I remember they just started throwing people's stuff across the parking lot. They were asking this one kid, he bought an old Squad, and he would just drive it around.
Oh, my God.
And they made this dude like run around doing like the sirens. It was hilarious. He's like, you know what? I'm a big fan of the European sirens. Like, I want you to do the European sirens. Running around in the European sirens. People's shoes, clothes are going everywhere, throwing it everywhere. And then we would go inside and they just beat the living snot out of us.
So other than like eating donuts and writing traffic tickets, what did you guys really learn in the academy? Like, what does that consist of?
So they teach you the basics. Right? You don't really learn how to be a cop until you get to your police department, because anytime you would go into like a DT situation or scenario base, it's always worst case scenario. You're fighting for your life. They're like, oh, here, you're responding to a bar fight. Go and figure it out. And these guys are in red man suits and stuff like that. So you automatically knew you're getting punched in the face. So every situation they try to train you for was like worst case scenario. But they had like a lawyer come in, teach you criminal law. He would literally go through the book and he'd be like, all right, you need to learn, like, you need to know this portion right here. So you're going to start highlighting when he goes over the law.
Yeah, right.
They teach you the difference between like domestic battery and the difference between assault and battery and all that stuff. So they literally just spoon feed you the information. You learn about that. You learn about crisis intervention training. You learn that stuff. How to do traffic reports, by hand. with the diagrams, all that stuff. So you did teach you the basics, but you don't really learn how to be actually a legitimate cop until you go to your police department.
So then you graduate and go straight into FTO. FTO, how does that work?
Yeah. So after graduation, then you go straight into FTO. So there's like a week. So at the end of it, you take a test, the state exam to become certified as a law enforcement officer. I took it, and at the time, I think they said there was like 3 or 4 different portions, and some of it has a little bit more of hazmat, some of it has a little bit of this, some of it has a little bit more of traffic code, and my test was all hazmat, and I didn't ever study hazmat.
State tests are always all hazmat. It makes no sense.
They're like, oh, how far upwind do you have to? I'm like, oh my God, I failed this. So literally.
I don't know. I'm a blue canary.
Yeah. So afterwards, I'm like, I failed. I failed. I'm getting fired. There's no way I passed. And the guy I went to the academy with, him and I literally were in-house for almost like 2 to 3 weeks, and they never told us we passed. So everyone in my academy class knew like days after. And him and I were like, we had to go talk to the commander. And we went up to the commander's office. We're like, hey, did you ever get our results back? He's like, yeah, we got them weeks ago. I was like, you couldn't tell us. Literally.
I've been sweating it out.
Sweating hard. I'm like, we fucking failed. We failed. And he's like, no. He's like, if you would have failed, you would have been gone by now. I'm like, oh, thanks for letting us know, dude.
Jesus. I just got to ask, the blue canary thing. Have you ever heard that as a cop?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so in the fire service, they teach us, I should say.
Okay.
Cops are blue canaries, because back in the day when you were coal mining,
you
would use a canary to tell you if like it became an IDLH atmosphere, and like,
if it died,
if the canary dies, like you shouldn't go in there, right?
Get the F out, yeah.
So cops are our blue canaries. Like if the cop's dead, like we probably shouldn't be in there.
We're the first responders.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you guys always just run in headlong, and it's like, that guy's not breathing.
Oh,
Maybe we should prepare for this.
I always love responding to a call, and they're like, is fire on scene? Yeah, fire's waiting for PD to come first. I'm like, yeah, of course you guys are.
Yeah, well, we legally can't fight anybody, so.
Well, I've seen some things.
Well, yeah, but legally.
So I mean, yeah, learn a lot in the academy, and then you really learn how to become a cop in FTO for sure,
right?
Because you learn all of the department's policies, procedures, and all
right.
That stuff.
I was just going to say, like, an academy can't teach you everything about the department you're going to. Like,
no.
Unless it's specifically for that department. I'm sure, like, if you go to ISP's academy, like, they teach you how to be an Illinois State Trooper, right?
Yes.
Like, but,
and they say that's a lot of more of like a military basis. The ISPs all state.
Yeah.
They're very by the book.
This is how you wear your Smokey the Bear hat.
Dude, those hats look awesome though, man.
I couldn't do it.
I get it. It's just like over your eyes.
Yeah, right.
It reminds me of like a company commander or drill instructor or whatever they call them now.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, so you learn a lot being in on the streets, and so like your FTOs actually really kind of matter. And my philosophy with FTOing is each FTO, you might not like them as a person, but they have something to teach you.
Yeah.
So you take a little bit from every person and make it your own.
Right. So how long is FTO? I mean, I'm sure every department's different. How long was yours?
Ours, I believe it was 2 to 3 weeks per person, and I think there was 3 to 4 stages, if I remember correctly. Your first stage, like, you're doing 10% of the work. You're not even driving. So your first guy basically shows you everything to do.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from my first person, which was Terry Bailey, and he was a Illinois vehicle code expert wizard. So that dude, he knew all the traffic laws. So I learned a lot from him, actually. And then my second phase, I believe I was with Jandura, who later became our canine. He was a good dude. And then I think my last phase was Mimi, who is now a commander, and she was really tough on me. I'll say this now, I hated her guts. But I later on learned to love, like, her and I are very close now. Like, I appreciate everything she has done for me because she made me the capo I was.
She was pushing you
hard. But I remember my first call responding. I got to I'm at the department, and they're like, usually you're doing in-house stuff, learning policies, reading policies, learn how to work CAD, all that stuff. And one of the sergeants made me go with the traffic guy, which is Wagner, which is one of my good buddies. He's a really good guy. And he brought me on a crash, and I came face to face with a sergeant at the time. She now became our commander of investigations, and she's old school.
Okay.
as old school gets. And she's like, do this crash report or do this tow report. I'm like, I never done a tow report.
Yeah, right.
He just comes at me, started yelling at me like, why isn't this done? Like, needs to be done. I'm like, I literally don't know what I'm doing.
I've been staring at the screen for 20 minutes.
Yeah. So that's like the downside. That was probably one of the downsides I did not like at all, is like the old school people where they just expect you to learn it and figure it the fuck out. But I mean,
Yeah, right.
you got to teach people how to do things properly. And I mean, that kind of follows me into my career when I went to investigations.
Okay. So you graduate FTO.
Well, I went through some rough times in FTO, which when we have my buddy Begwitz on, he can touch on. But there's a few times that I forgot my gun, because you take people to lockup and you put your gun into, you can't bring your gun into lockup.
So you almost didn't graduate FTO.
Yes. Didn't. And I graduated, no problem. But there were some hiccups for sure where I left my gun like once or twice. And that's when I started carrying around a non-gun taped to my hand and had rocks in my pocket. That's when I was with Mimi. Begwitz made me go to Public Works, take evidence bags, fill them with rocks, and then put in my pocket. And I would, dude, there's a few times where we went to the hospital, like literally that night we went to the like anywhere you want, like you don't want to be seen with dumb shit on you, is when they saw me. So we had calls that brought us to the hospital where I was sitting. Oh God.
There's the camera.
Yeah, where we're in the hospital.
It's those Italian hands.
All over the place. Sort of the hospital, walking in and you got rocks in your pocket, and we bring someone to county to be processed, and I have rocks in my pocket. People were just staring at me. It's hilarious.
All I could think of is in that movie, what, The Other Guys?
Yeah. Yep.
It looks like they gave it a new coat of linseed oil. You might want to.
Oh, it's wooden gun. Yeah. So the last time I forgot my pistol was one of our traffic guys was on the bridge and almost got hit by a car, and we're in lockup. So we sprinted out, and then not even thinking to myself, I left my gun in lockup in a lockbox.
Most important piece of equipment.
Yep. So he walks up to me and goes, hey, what are you missing? I'm like, nothing. Begwitz. He's like, what are you missing? I'm like, nothing. He goes, you want to check again, buddy? And I look down. I'm like, oh, frick.
Damn it, again?
Yep. He goes, come see me in my office after this call. Oh, it's not good.
Jesus.
So yeah, I passed FTO, and then I was on the street. Learned a lot. It was a good crew. I was with a really good crew. I was on Begwitz's shift on nights. Actually, I started out on days until like the shifting period happens, because every so after once a year you pick shifts and to seniority and all that stuff. So I was on days for a little bit, and I mean this kind of goes to like the old school cops where they don't like to do things. He wants to go upstairs. And I was like, I'm pumped, right? I'm on the street by myself, and I would be pulling traffic. It was Sunday morning. I'd be pulling traffic nonstop. And these guys are like, what are you doing? Because you make them look bad. So some of these older guys are like, what are you doing? You need to slow down. But
yeah, right.
I just kept getting after it. Which,
dude, you're making us look bad.
Yeah. Which brings me to the story of my first encounter. I think it was my first day by myself, was a Sunday or Saturday. And right off the rip, things hit the fan, man, where our guys are being pulled in all these different directions. We had a violation of order protection. So I brought that guy to county, and as I was coming back, it wasn't even my zone. They're like, hey, we have a call pending. I'm like, give it to me. I'll take it. Dispatch. They sent me to this person's house for a welfare check, and it turned into a shit show. So I walk up to the door, and it's a welfare check. Some state police guys calling about this woman that he's friends with and hasn't heard from her. No one tells me anything about this person. They have the address, all that stuff. And in CAD, there's always like emergency. Sometimes you can attach emergency notes, and it was never passed to me. Well, it was a officer warning note like, hey, listen, we've had problems with this person in the past where she's done XYZ, and it was like sketchy things like officer safety issues. Like, you need to know about this. No one told me. So I go up to the door, I knock on the door, and I hear, who is it? And I'm like, this is Romeo Police, so-and-so. I don't want to say their name. Like, so-and-so, we're just checking to see if you're okay. And all I hear is, F you, mother effer. And I'm like, oh, wow. This is new. Like, maybe I have the wrong house. So I go back to my squad. I'm like on the computer. I'm typing. I'm like, no, I have the right address. So I'm like, hey, any additional units? They were dealing with county was, that's when we switched our dispatch. We had our own dispatch at Romeoville, and then we switched to countywide. So then we were sharing with North County at the time. And I call out, and they're like, hey, emergency traffic, don't say anything. I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll get off the air. So I'm knocking again. I'm like, hey, XYZ, come to the door. I just want to make sure you're okay, and then I'll leave. Well, she comes to the door. And the glass, there's like a glass storm door. She cracks open her door, and I can just see her head. Well, actually, before that, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked. So I'm knocking, and I look up, and some houses have like windows above their door. I can't remember what it's called.
Like transoms.
Transoms, yes. And I look up, and I'm knocking, and I look up, and I just see this lady's face, and she looks like a witch.
In a transom?
Dude.
What, was she levitating?
I don't know. I think so. From what I've heard from her, later on, I'll tell you what happened, like the backstory of her. I look up, and she's staring at me, and she looked like she was 90 years old. Her teeth were rotting out of her mouth, and she's like, fuck you, motherfucker. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, this is, like, it scared me. Like, my butthole, like, that's like your butthole puckering moment.
Yeah,
Because you did not expect anyone to be up there and then looking like that.
Yeah.
Because
once again, how did she get in the transom?
I think at the time she was like 50 years old. So I was expecting like a 50-year-old woman, and it was not a 50-year-old woman. So finally she comes to the door.
It was 50 years old, crystal meth.
Dude, something. So she finally opens the door, but she like just peeks her head around the corner, and she's like super sweet to me. She's like, come on in. And I'm like, no.
Nope.
Yeah.
I'll stay here.
I'm like, I might be new and dumb, but I'm not that dumb. So I was like, I had my hand on the door, but it was broke, so I couldn't. I was like, just push it open. I want to make sure you're okay, and then I'll leave. This lady reaches out. She opens the door all the way, pushes it open, and I can see behind her, she has trash everywhere. She's a hoarder. Yeah. And I think to the right of her was like a half wall. So she finally pushes the door open, and I grab it. And I grab it, and I'm slowly transitioning to my right hand to open the door. And as soon as I do that, she grabs a kitchen knife, like one of those long kitchen knives, and she jumps at me with it. I slam the door shut. I grab on my pistol. I'm like, XYZ, drop that right now. And she's like, shoot me. And she's taking the knife, and the glass door shut now, the storm door shut, and she's taking the tip of the knife and scratching the glass with the tip of it. It's like nails on a chalkboard. You could hear it. And she goes, I'm gonna effing kill you, mother effer. She's like, I'm gonna effing kill you. And I believed her, because
I bet.
She would 100% did it. And she's like, shoot me. I'm like, no, we don't want to do that. And in my mind, I'm like, I can take her, right? She's like a 50-year-old frail woman. I could take her. So then she shuts it. She's like, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna kill this. I'm like, just rambling. And that's when at that time, even the door was still open. I'm trying to mash my emergency button on the radio, and I couldn't get it. And I finally get it. And I'm like, I need additional units. I have a woman with a knife. And later I found out our dispatcher got a lot of flack from that, because she's like, they're yelling, all their dispatchers were yelling at her, like, you need to tell your person to get off the air. And she's like, F you. She's like, my officer just got stabbed. Like, we're not shutting off the air. So
yeah, right.
So then finally the cavalry comes. Excuse me. And we make a plan to make entry. We were going to go through the garage door, but then it wasn't working. We got the code from the guy, but it wouldn't work. And we're going to make entry. And the sergeant comes with a shield. I mean, we have a plan together. We got the canine there. One of the commanders comes. He was on a detail. It was a weekend. So we stack up. They look at me. He goes, you have taser. You have lethal. He has shield. You have rifle. And we're going to make entry. So we pop that door open, get the screen door open. We kick it in. This guy's shouldering it. The guy that has lethal is shouldering. He's a big dude. Shouldering, and then finally hits it so hard, momentum takes him into the house. Oh. And you got the door casing around his shoulders, and she's standing there with a lighter, and she poured gas everywhere, and she was trying to light it on fire.
Oh my God.
Dude, it was sketchy. I'm like, this is actually happening right now. So they release the canine. Well, she takes a swipe at him. I thought she stabbed him. Well, it comes across his chest. Right? He falls back. He falls down. The canine comes in and bites him on the hand. So I remember that guy saying, he's like, dude, I didn't know what to do. He's like, I didn't know if I had to shoot her for trying to stab me or I had to shoot the canine. He's like, it was just chaos.
Right.
So the sergeant comes in with a shield. She drops everything, grabs a knife out of her waistband, and she's like
She
looks
was strapped.
dude, looks at us, and like in my mind, she's like, let's get it on.
Yeah, right.
So I lean over my sergeant's shoulder and I deploy my taser. I hit her in the chest, and she just took it like a champ. And I'm juicing her, like I'm holding it down, and she just like still standing there,
You're like slapping the thing. Is it working?
That's what I thought. Right. So because in 2018, that's when I had tore my labrum apprehending an individual for domestic violence. And then I had gotten surgery on my labrum that was torn. I think it was like a 9-month process.
Yeah, it's about right for that.
Yeah. So it was, I think right around May-ish, I went back to the street.
You tore your labia.
My labia, yeah. And that's when I had really two phenomenal sergeants, Tuke and Begwitz. And that's when I was on the street with Jimmy and May, and all those are really good guys. And we had a great time, man. And that's when the school resource officer position opened up. I interviewed for that. Finally got it. But that was postponed because it wasn't opening at that point. So when it did open up fully, that's when I would transition to it.
Okay.
But one of the big things I think that really got me to this point of where we are now with this podcast, and one thing I'm very passionate about is suicide prevention.
Right, right.
And that's when I lost my really good friend Ben to suicide. He took his own life in 2019.
Still can't believe that happened.
Right. So, and man, I wish there was the resources that we have now for our guys, because I was not ready to be back on the street.
Right.
That's when, I just got back on the street from the labrum tear. We had Luca. He was still super young. And that really messed me up.
Yeah.
Bad.
You had a lot going on. 'Cause you had that. You had
My grandpa dying.
That was that time frame, huh?
Yeah. So before I actually went into law enforcement, that's when my papa died.
Okay.
Actually, both my grandfathers died right around that time too.
Yeah, I remember
My dad's.
both of them were real close. And you said something to me, and I was like, it didn't register to me at the time that it was like your mom's dad that passed. Because I was like, oh shit, like that was, like you said, he was the patriarch, like, damn.
Oh, dude, a lot. And then my dad's brother passed away right around that time too.
Yeah.
He passed away. My dad's dad passed away, and then my mom's dad passed away. So I was in a dark spot in which you're handling all these calls too, and you don't know how to process everything. So I always had to try to be strong for everyone. And I remember standing by his bed, my mom's dad, and we literally were just with him when he was passing.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone crying, and I tried to stay as strong as possible, because at that point in time, I thought that was the best thing to do. And it really set me up for my future of not dealing with my traumas, and it really put me down a dark road. But then when Ben passed, it hit me hard, man. I remember I was at a wedding, and he was texting me, and I blame myself for it, because for the longest time, because he was texting me saying things that he would say sometimes, and I thought it was just like another normal day, and we were supposed to go to the Bears game the next day. And I remember, we went to the wedding. After the wedding, we went to someone else's house, and we were having cocktails, and it was like late at night, and I was texting him. He wasn't responding. And then I got woken up at like 4:00, maybe, earlier, 3 a.m, to Bagwitz at my front door. And I'm hammered still, and I'm in my underwear, and my dog's flipping out. And I'm like, why is someone at my door this early? This is not good. Right. I remember having my gun. I grabbed my gun. I was walking down the stairs at my townhome and opened the door, and I saw the one Sergeant McClellan and then Begwitz there. I think he was in civilian clothes. And I'm like, what happened? I'm like, this isn't good. And they told me, and I lost it. I started bawling. And I remember going upstairs, and I punched a hole in my wall going up the stairs, and Alyssa came. And that day is something that I will remember for the rest of my life.
You never told me that.
Yep.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And I remember the detectives from Chicago wanting to call me, and they called me on the phone. They're like, when's the last time you talked to him? XYZ, all that stuff. And I'm not going to go too deep into it out of respect for his family. But I remember telling him, you need to let them know now, because they wanted to wait till later. I was like, no, you will let them know now, or I will fucking do it for you.
Yeah, right.
Because this is something they need to know right now. And I remember giving them, I'm like, you have an hour. I remember giving them a time frame, and you have an hour. And I remember going to the house, and I still remember to this day, I don't like how they handled that call. And it pissed me off.
Kind of callous.
Yeah. Pissed me the F off. And I was angry and bitter. And that whole thing went through, and I remember taking days off, burning vacation, burning sick, and I wasn't ready to go back. And then I, eventually had to, because I was running out of time, because I burnt a lot of time for Luca being born.
Right.
And I remember being on the street, man, and I would literally bawl my eyes out in the middle of the night. I'd like pull behind a grocery store or whatever it was, and a song would come on, and I would just lose it.
Right.
Lose it. And it was definitely a hard time for me, man. It really was. So that's when suicide prevention, all that stuff really became personal to me. And that drove me to they started a peer group support at our department. I put in for that. I wanted to go for that. I did it. Anytime any of our guys would go through a situation, I would always try to be there for that person, because I knew what it was like to be in that position. And there's a few tough calls I had to go on for our guys too, that, hopefully I'll have him on. He can talk about it to, his side of the story. But, I became really close with one of our guys, Stewie. He went through a lot, and I felt maybe if I can, share my experience with him, maybe it'll help soften some of the blow, and which you never does. You never, grief is a place to visit. It's not a place to stay. And I was a permanent resident.
You were stuck there.
I was a permanent resident for the longest time. So that's why, that became very serious to me. And I wanted to start something along those lines of giving back to our guys and anyone who else would deal with that situation.
Yeah, right. It's funny, you just talking about it and bringing it up. That I remember when you texted me about Ben, I was like brand new on the job, because that was the end of 2019. So I was like brand new. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I actually was on shift that day. I remember you texted me, and I think we had just had dinner or something. And I was like, didn't know how to process it, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the bells went off, and it's like, oh shit, gotta go on a call.
Yeah, man. It was tough. It was really tough.
I can imagine. I know how close you two were.
Yeah, and you look back, I see it coming now, and two, it's like I blame myself for the longest time, because I should know better, because I've been through those trainings, and I should have saw those signs, and I should have done certain things. But that type of, when you're in that type of situation as that person, you're like a burden to people, right?
Yeah,
and it's a full circle now, because after my shooting, I got to that dark spot of, I feel like I'm a burden to people. And I recognized it in myself, and I'm like, I need help. I need to find help, not even just for me, right? It's for my family and my friends. It's just, and being in law enforcement or being a military member, these people, it's that old school mentality of toughening up, you're going to be fine.
Right.
And not talking about it. And that's what I took on, and it's not how to handle those things.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, so that's right around that time when I transitioned to investigations. I was on SWAT, and my start of my investigations career was not great. And that kind of hampered me throughout my investigations career as well, because it's that old school mentality of do the job, figure it out, and get on with it, right? So they sent me to a bunch of trainings to become a detective, lead homicide, all that stuff that you need to do beforehand. And I didn't know how to really legitimately work a case right. So I was getting cases while I was in training, and I didn't know. And then I got an email one day like, hey, you have these cases. I fully expect them to be worked while you're at these trainings. And I'm like, that's kind of a slap in the face.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, oh, figure it out. Like, I get it. Like, yeah. But you never gave me formal training of how to work these things.
Right.
So it put me behind like an 8 ball, and that kind of like hindered me throughout my career in investigations with being kind of slower with cases and stuff. I never really learned, but that also made me want to help the next person. So when my really good buddy Francisco got hired up there or brought up there, I made sure to let him know the ins and outs of everything so I could set this kid up for success, because I know what I went through and I didn't want him to go through the same thing that I went through.
Yeah, right. So real quick, I just want to ask a question. So were you going down this road of getting into investigations prior to all of the grief that you dealt with?
Yeah, it was right around the same time frame.
Okay. I guess kind of what I was going to ask is, do you think you kind of went that route and put that extra workload on you? Because I know you also became involved in other things such as SWAT. You became real involved with the union, if I remember correctly.
So it was the Fraternal Order of Police. Our union was not. Our union was MAPS. We had our own Fraternal Order of Police.
Okay.
Where we were just strictly like charitable or just like things for the members for the union. And yeah, I got extremely involved when I actually went upstairs in investigations. I was a trustee. I was running the Cops and Kids event where we would buy kids Christmas gifts. Yeah. And I loved that. I loved that aspect of it. That's one of the things I wanted to do. So I submerged myself in those as well. So I also didn't do myself a favor by giving myself time to learn it and also taking on additional responsibilities.
Right. Well, I guess my question though is, do you think what you were dealing with mentally influenced your decision into like diving headlong into all these projects? Were you trying to, I don't want to say run away, but maybe fill your mind with other things?
Oh, subconsciously? Yeah. I'm sure it was like, all right, give myself more things to do so that I don't have to think about what happened.
Right. Help me just like shove that shit down so I have other stuff filling
100%
in my brain.
I'm sure subconsciously that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like, all right, I'll take my mind off of what's going on and not deal with my problems and push into this, which I mean, in a sense was also rewarding to myself, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm giving back. I can see I'm making a difference with these kids' lives.
Yeah. Right.
And especially with the school resource officer position where I helped out a kid, long story short, he was a really bright kid, went to school for the U of I, was in band. He reached out to me after I helped him out with his situation, and he told me, he's like, thank you so much for what you did. So that really resonated with me. I'm like, it was like addicting. Like I need to do more.
Impact.
Yep. So that's another reason why I really did enjoy being in investigations.
Right. Well, like good things to get involved in for sure. It's just more so that like trying to avoid what you're dealing with by like, put more on top of you,
100%. And I always thought to myself, I need to see a therapist. And I think I even did. I know I did. I tried to do it in like 2020-ish, 2021. I just didn't like her. It backfired on me. Not really backfired, but I didn't get out of it what I wanted. There's a few times our department sent us to this wellness visit in Lombard. I don't know if you guys, first responders.
Never heard of it.
So they would send us once a year.
Okay.
To do it. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm going to take this opportunity and talk about what's going on with me. Maybe this will be the start. And my first visit, I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it.
So I always heard like a little piece of advice, and it was like, if you go and see a therapist, it's like going on first dates.
Yep.
You got to like do numerous before you find that one that you connect with, that you can actually talk to.
100%. So they sent me, and it just gave us a bunch of ways to handle it. And I see why they did it. It makes sense. Like, okay, if you're not going here because they know you have an issue. They're going there to help you, give you the tools to help deal with some of those things.
Right.
In my mind, I'm like, I'm going there. I want to talk about this, X, Y, Z, and I never got a chance. So they would just give me these things, and I'm like, this is stupid. Why? Yeah, right. I'm wasting my time.
Right.
So that left like a bitter taste in my mouth. So it really didn't want me. I didn't want to go back, and I think that's what really kind of hampered my own mentality as well.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. I don't not even close to anything like this, but like when I was a kid, I saw a therapist for a short time, and I just wasn't a fan of her. So I was like, oh, this is what all therapy is like. This is stupid.
Yeah. So you write it off.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not going to open up. You're not going to tell them what's actually bothering you and all that stuff. So, and it just, set me back.
So, so you go into the school resource officer, and that led into the rest. very short time.
Yeah,
that you
so
had left in your career.
Yeah, so when I got not hired on, when I had the new position, they actually were going away from the dual role because they knew it was a lot for that person to handle because you were supposed to be in the school, you're supposed to be handling all the school issues and then take on a caseload as well. So how can you handle a full caseload of investigations and then also handle all the cases that you pick up from the school at the same time?
Right.
So at that time, the chief came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, listen, we know you interviewed for this spot. What position do you want? Do you want the school resource officer role or do you want the detective role?" He really kind of pushed me. He's like, I think you will excel at the detective role.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys that were in investigations and one female was a detective, they all pushed me to become just a full-time detective. And that's what I wanted to at the same time, which I feel like I did love the school resource officer role and I wanted to stay in there. But if you give me a choice between the two to further my career, it would be investigations all the way.
Yeah.
And it was a bittersweet moment for me where I had to step away and I didn't want to at the time, but for my own career path, I stepped away.
Okay.
And then took on the full role as a detective.
And you loved it.
I didn't because there's a few calls that we went to where I wanted to be the hands-on guy, right? Because I love being like not physically, but like.
Well, you were still so young in your career.
Right. Exactly. So we had one call where the guy like literally ripped off rounds and I was holding perimeter and I was on SWAT at the time. Like I'm trained for this position. Like I'm trained beyond this outskirts of this perimeter to handle anything that comes out. I feel like I'm more squared away than some of these patrol officers.
But I don't want to get my khakis and pull up dirty.
No, I did. I didn't care. I got pulled away and I was pissed because they wanted us to interview some of these witnesses. And
okay.
I was like, I'm beyond this, right? In a sense.
Yeah, right.
You think very highly of yourself.
No.
Right. So I was like, well, you're pulling me off the thing for this. This is stupid. I was pissed off. But then, I was like, okay, this is my role. I need to do my role.
Yeah, right. It's no longer a get in where you fit in. Like you have a very specific role.
Right. So I had to transition from being in SWAT and, handling that stuff to, interviewing, getting intel so that we can get this person out without being armed. So, yeah.
So how long did you do that investigator role?
I was only in the school resource officer for like maybe 6 months, but that was right around COVID. So, the kids weren't even in school at the time.
Yeah, right.
And they were some of the kids were there part of the day and they do e-learning the other part of the day. So it was kind of like a weird transition for me. But then I did that until 2022, like 2023-ish.
Okay.
And then that's when I was at my desk and the TAC position, which is the tactical officer position, my really good buddy Jimmy got into it and he had a partner then transitioned to another unit and he was by himself for a while and they were starting to interview for that open position and he would joke with me like, hey, you should just put in for it. Like I want Dom. And I'm like, subconsciously, I was like, you know what? I do need to get in this position. And I'm like, I'm taking demotion, right? In a sense. And it's going to look bad, but I'm going to be behind a desk for the rest of my career. And I'm already in investigations as a detective. Right. I will be behind a desk because if from there it's to sergeant to commander to, so it's like,
yeah,
I didn't want to be behind a desk. So
it goes back to that whole being young.
Yeah,
in your career.
Exactly. So I'm like, I have to do 30 something years, I think.
Yeah. Right.
So I was like, I'll do this position and then do sergeant and go on. So I put in for it. And I had the experience. I had SWAT experience, which would help us out for operations. I had investigations experience. I know how to write search warrants, do data dumps, do cell phone dumps, all that stuff.
Yeah, you had all that excess knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, I'm perfect for it. Like I'm going to do it. I'm going to work with one of my really good friends. We're going to have a blast. So I talked to my sergeant too, who's a detective sergeant, and he's like, yeah, man, do it. He's like, I think you should do it. He's like, I think you'd be good for it.
Yeah.
And we did a trial period where it was like 3 or 4 days where him and Jimmy and I were running and gunning, and we literally got into shit every single day.
You called me. I was driving. I don't know where me and Lauren were going, but we were in the truck. We were driving, and you called me, and you're like, dude, so I just did a ride along with my buddy. I think I'm transferring out of the detective role.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, tell me more.
Yep. And it was the best of both worlds because I'm still in the investigations office. I'm still working with all the detectives. I'm still doing investigations. I'm still investigating my own cases. So it's like the best of both worlds, but then I get to be on the street.
Yeah, right.
And I remember the one day where Jimmy is borderline autistic.
We all are.
Dude, he has a memory. He came to my
I like trains.
Dude, he came to my house one day and he's like, why does your neighbor have organ plates? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, organ plates like M8543667. And I look at him like, what are you talking about, dude?
Okay, Rain Man.
Yeah, exactly. So he was perfect for that, man. We would pull into like a hotel parking lot and he would see these shady cars that were running in the parking lot, which is weird, at like midnight, and he would memorize their plates. And he literally would be driving, one hand on here, other hand on the computer in the parking lot, and he's running these plates at the same time.
Yeah.
And he ran like 3 or 4 plates before we even made contact with one car. And we made contact with this car. They were like construction workers out of town. We just, we bullshitted, shot the shit. And then we're leaving the parking lot. And he goes, wait a second. He's like, this car's out of Chicago. It got stopped by Bolingbrook 2 weeks before XYZ. He's like, I want to stop this car or approach this car. So we approach the car and this guy's inside. And he's got an open bottle of liquor on the front seat, I think it was. Or it was open. It was definitely a bottle of tequila, I think. And
what kind of tequila?
I don't remember. Patron, I think, maybe. Because it was like that short bottle with the nubby top. And we walk up to the car, and I'm on one side. He's on the other side. He's making contact. Dude wouldn't roll down his window. You'd only crack it. And all I hear is, don't touch that effing gun. And instantly, when you hear gun, your butthole puckers. I draw my pistol. And I'm looking, I can't see, his windows are all darked out. And he's like yelling at him, don't touch it, don't reach for it. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. So I walk around to the front of the car and then I post up and I can see him perfectly and I'm pushed out. And I'm like, don't touch that gun or I will shoot you. And Jimmy's in the car already grabbing him, trying to pull him out. And that's when I come around to assist and I can't really see in the back seat. And I flash a light in the car with my gun, and then I go to holster. I'm like, wait a second. It's like that weird, eerie feeling of cleared again. So I come up, flash it again, and I put it. Almost got written up for that. But that's when I knew what I was getting myself into at that point of this is what it's going to be like. And that dude had one of those pistols. I think it was a SIG, but those rifle rounds.
Oh, we talked about this.
Yes.
Is it the 5.7, right?
Dude, we would have been dead. That would punch right through.
Is that FN 5.7?
Yes, that's it. Yep. And I was like, that would have punched right through and we would have been dead. Yeah. So at that point, I'm like, this is, first of all, I was amped up because we had a gun off the street and it made us look great, right? Because I remember the chief came up to us one day and he's like, if I do this, he's like, you guys better produce. We're like, don't worry, we're going to produce. And we did, dude.
Yeah.
Those 4 days we produced. So I think that was,
but not for long.
Yeah, that was a good trial period of letting like the command know like we were going to be a TAC unit and a hardcore TAC unit.
Well, you got 2 like-minded dudes that you got to be somewhat good at that. You got to be dedicated to it. And if you guys clicked and jived, you guys probably had no problem, right?
No, because Jimmy's one personality. I'm a different personality. I'm very easygoing. Jimmy's very type A of I want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, man, cool. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, right.
I'm very easygoing in that aspect. So him and I mashed very well, and we would have made we made a good TAC unit. So we went to a drug conference for a few weeks.
Was your guys' nickname Rain Man and Muscle?
Something, I don't know. But yeah, man. So, went to a few trainings after that. I was put into that position. We went to a few trainings, went to a drug conference. It was a great time. And then it was time to go on the street. And I remember the day before my shooting, or 2 days before, I think it was the day before actually, I had gotten a new vest. They expire. You have to, the Kevlar goes bad. So my vest finally got in, and I have prayer cards in my vest. One of my grandfather and then one of Ben. And I remember I have a picture of it on my phone of when I took it, because I took a picture of the vest. I took a picture, I think, of the prayer cards, and I put them in that trauma plate right over my chest.
Uh-huh.
And the next day I get shot. Brand new vest.
Damn it, you screwed up the vest.
Yep. But yeah, so you want to get into that, man?
Well, that's where we were going to go. I was going to lead into it, but you already did.
Do we need to take a break or no? All right, let's just get into it, right?
Yeah.
So I can't really talk about the case portion of this shooting because it's still ongoing.
Right.
So I will get into detail about me being shot and going from there.
What it feels like to have a bullet go through you.
Yeah. It's quick, actually.
You don't say.
It's quick and it burns.
I think.
Yeah, so let's get into it. The last thing I remember is sprinting with my pistol in my hand and then blacking out. Have you ever been choked out?
No, I have not.
You ever been knocked out?
No, I have not.
So only way I can explain it is the portion of it is like waking up from a dream state. Like you feel like you're dreaming, right? Well, what actually happened in hindsight is the bullet went in just underneath my jaw, like underneath where that soft part is, where your tongue, underneath your tongue. So it went in through my throat, hit my hyoid bone, which the hyoid bone is, we can tell if a person is strangulated to death because it usually breaks the hyoid bone.
Yeah.
So it struck my hyoid bone, it hit my C5, fractured my C5, and then went through the right side, severed my vertebral artery, and then traveled through my shoulder and came out the back side of my shoulder, just like in my shitty tattoo that I got at 17 years old.
Yeah.
So
screwed that tattoo up
hard. And I remember laying on the ground, drowning in my own blood. And my arm is on fire. And I remember someone talking to me, which later is Jimmy, dragging me, saying, "You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right." And I just kept like choking and drowning in my own blood. And I remember like my hand being dragged, and then I couldn't hold on to my gun anymore. And all I kept saying was, "My gun, get my gun, get my gun." But it was coming out like, so he finally gets my vest off me, and I flip over into the street, and I just start spitting out this blood. And I thought to myself, this isn't good. This is not good. I'm losing so much blood and I can't breathe. So then they, thank God for Jimmy, because usually it's you want to get an ambulance.
Right.
Scene's not safe. We don't know where this guy is. I was out of it. I was concussed. So when I fell, the bullet knocked me out and I cracked my skull on the sidewalk and I fractured my skull in 3 different places.
You took a nap on the
Took
job.
a long nap. Not a long nap, but so I fractured my skull on the right side. I hit so hard that my sinuses cracked and cracked behind my sinuses as well. So I was concussed. I have blood in my brain, air in my brain. I'm out of it, and all I kept thinking to myself, and I remember this from some of the trainings I've been into, and it's called like the warrior mentality. And all I kept thinking is, I need to keep breathing. I need to keep breathing. I need to keep breathing for Luca. And that's all I kept thinking about was my kid. And they get me into the car. Jimmy, thank God, thought fast. He said, "I'm not waiting for an ambulance. Fuck that." Call over to the other guy. Told Swan to get the car, bring it over. And they loaded me and they went.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the back seat, and I remember looking out the window, and that's what I was thinking, is I got to keep breathing for my kid. That's the only person that I kept thinking about. As I was literally choking in my own blood. And I remember Jimmy frantically trying to pull like my clothes off me. All I heard was a flip of a knife. You know, that snap.
Yeah.
And all I kept thinking about is, this motherfucker's going to stab me. Like we're going like 80 miles an hour and this dude is going to stab me. So he's cutting off my shirt. We literally almost died like 4 times going to the hospital.
Oh, so I've listened to like the radio traffic. I think you sent me a big portion of it, and like just hearing all of the units blocking traffic and hey, we're here. Dispatch is asking, where are you guys at? Like, we got to close intersections and stuff. Yeah.
And all you hear is, "Go effing faster."
Yeah.
Jimmy's screaming. Kudos to him, man, because he cut that. He didn't know where the blood was going. I had a beard on just almost as long as this. And he didn't know where the blood was coming from. And I was bleeding.
Right.
He was covered in blood. I was covered in blood. guys that responded to that scene thought I was dead because there was so much blood. Listen, I looked at the medical records. I lost 4 bags. I think there's like, 10 in your body or something like that. I almost lost like 40% of my blood. Yeah, neither do I. But yeah, man. So I lost a shit ton of blood. And on the way there, Swan almost gets T-boned by a semi-truck.
Oh, my God.
I'm hanging halfway out the door. Jimmy's trying to bring me in as we're going like 70 down the road. Finally get the door shut, almost gets T-boned. And then on the way to the hospital, there's like a turn. And if you don't hit it correctly and you're going too fast, you can go into a lake they call it a lake. But we almost went into a freaking pond. It was just straight chaos, man. And then when we pull up to the hospital, Jimmy opens the door and I just fall face first into the ambulance parking lot to go into the ER room. And he's like, "How you doing, buddy?" And
meanwhile, the nurses walk out. Can he go in a wheelchair?
Oh, dude, yeah. So we called ahead of time, like, get a stretcher waiting for us. And when we pull up and I'm on the ground, he's screaming at him. He's like, "Get a effing stretcher! What do you do?" It was like Alyssa size, 5'3", 100-pound soaking wet,
making the brand new ER nurse cry.
Yeah, like pick this. I'm like 240 pounds, 6'1", and he's screaming at him. But that's when the one time that actually I spoke clearly. He's like, "How you doing, buddy?" And I'm like, "Just living the fucking dream, Jimmy." He's like, "I just started dying." Yeah, man. So they put me on a stretcher. I could barely walk. They put me on the stretcher, and I remember getting wheeled in, man. And from the body cam I saw, there's just blood trail coming from my body into the ER, and they just start cutting the clothes off me when we get into the ER. And I remember seeing this guy at the drug conference that got shot down in Kentucky when he took her around to the lake, and he made a joke when he got to the ER and they cut off his pants. He goes, "Listen, ladies, I'm not usually this small." So I thought to myself, that's the joke I'm going to make while they're cutting the clothes off me, but I couldn't talk because I was just gargling my own
I was going to say, just kind of like,
Yep. So then I took a little nap. They airlifted me to Loyola Hospital in Chicago, or Maywood. I think it's Maywood. And I remember waking up to someone holding my hand, and I was intubated. Dude, there's no worse feeling than being intubated because you can't breathe. So I went to sleep thinking I can't breathe, and I woke up thinking I can't breathe. So that's in my throat, and my mom's like talking to me. You know, my mom kind of, so she's like, "It's okay, it's okay." And I'm saying to myself, like, "Get this out of my throat." She's like, "What are you saying? Don't talk." I'm like, "No, get it out now. I need this out of my throat now. Like, this is uncomfortable." And they put me back to sleep, but then they wake me back up. I think it was around like midday, and they're going to take the tube out of my throat, the airway, and they pull it out, and it just like I don't know how to explain it. It's the weirdest feeling, and they pull it out. I'm like, "Ugh." Like that was weird. And as soon as they did, I projectile vomited blood everywhere. God, man.
You need to cough.
Yeah.
Cough.
Exactly. Man, that was, and I was all jacked up on painkillers at that time. I remember some of it. I don't remember all of it. I remember them telling me that my right shoulder, the brachial plexus, got screwed up, and I remember not being able to move my arm, and my arm being on fire, non-stop fire. So they hooked me up with they put me on ketamine, which, by the way, was phenomenal. So the doctor's like, "If he ever starts hallucinating, let us know." And I was hallucinating hard, and I didn't let anyone know. I was like looking up at the ceiling, and I'm, like those tiles on the ceiling, they have all the dots and stuff. Yeah. I looked over at my cousin Allie, and I was like, "Do you see the scripture on the ceiling?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Nothing." Never mind. They moved me to another room after I was stabilized the first night. After I literally was choking in my own blood all night.
Yeah.
So I would have to constantly be suctioned.
Right.
So after I was stabilized, they moved me to another room, and Harry Potter was on the TV. And I asked Alyssa, I was like, "Do you see the fairy dust coming off the TV?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Nothing." Nothing. Yeah. Don't worry about it. And then my buddy Kellen flew in from Florida, and I was like, do you guys hear that? Like, well, you hear what? I'm like, you hear the clock. Is it the clock talking? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's saying 1, 2, 3. And then that's when they cut me off and they slimmed down my my ketamine flow, which was probably for the best.
Maybe he doesn't need ketamine anymore.
He doesn't need it. No, but my uncle, I remember this too. I was in such pain. Anytime anyone would come in, they always would grab my right arm. Always. And it just was excruciating. And if you've ever been in that much pain, I'm sure you have because you're back, but
Not that kind.
It's the only thing you can think about. And my uncle, I remember my uncle talking to me. My Uncle Randy, he's always like very level-headed, very calm in demeanor, and he would just play country music. He's like, just breathe. And he really got me through that part in the hospital.
Yeah.
Because all I kept thinking about was how bad my arm was jacked up.
Yeah, that's all you could focus on.
Yeah, right. And I mean, everyone came to visit. And I was in bed for 3 or 4 days, man. They wouldn't even let me up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, and when I could get up, I couldn't even really walk. I had to learn how to walk again.
Right.
Yeah. And I went in at 240. Excuse me. And I came out at 210. I lost so much weight.
Well, that's from all the blood you lost.
Yeah. So
they never replaced it.
Yeah. I plan on, I think it would be a great idea to have Alyssa get on and give her aspect of it because she gives, and my mom too, of how it actually was in the hospital.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because to me it was, I would take naps, wake up when people come to visit.
Right. Yeah, so, you're out of it. You're just like
screwed up.
Hey, I'm just breathing right now.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Exactly. I was very okay with letting people see my junk too for some reason.
Well, I mean, that just happens.
Yep. So I would sit up in bed and Alyssa's like, your junk's out. I'm like, I don't care. I was like, let everyone see.
Do you see the fairy dust coming from it?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was in for a week, man, and I was finally discharged, and the chief asked my mom if I wanted a reception or, a drive home, and my mom's like, the biggest one you can get. And I hated it.
Dude, as soon as I saw that parade for you, I was like, oh, Dom is so pissed about this. Like, if there's anybody I know that wants to just be in a regular old car with nobody around knowing what's going on, get put in his house.
Yes.
And nobody ever knows.
Yep.
And then here you get an escort from Loyola all the way to your house. The fire department's here to welcome you.
Dude, they had over the overpasses, Lockport. My buddy Ryan Mars got his guys together in Lockport. They put up a thing. I think Lamont did. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. 100% thank you so much to everybody that participated. But if you are in my position, I guarantee you would have felt the same way.
Yeah, right. Well, I just mean the one person that wants no recognition for anything. Right.
So I remember telling the chief, I was like, I'm not leaving this hospital unless you get all those guys that were with me that night up here. That's Francisco, Jimmy, Swan. I'm no hero. They are the heroes.
Yeah,
They will walk out with me. And they did. And then that's why I actually was okay with doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm no hero. What did I do? Just absorb a bullet?
Took a bullet to the face and took a nap. I didn't do anything.
Yeah. I was running and I got hit.
Yeah.
What did I do?
So then the recovery to getting back to normal started, man. And it was a battle. It was a battle. I couldn't even lift my right arm at all. Yeah. I had to pick it up and put it on the table. I couldn't lift it over my head. Nothing. The trauma from the bullet when it went in, it really affected my brachial plexus, which is off the C5, the nerve root that controls my deltoid.
Yeah.
And thank God for Alyssa because occupational therapy, she knows all that stuff, and she told me straight up, she's like, it's your C5. I know it is because you can't move your deltoid. And then I atrophied quickly, and you don't really realize how fast you atrophy.
It happens really quickly.
And from the week, you could tell my right arm looked like Skeletor. My deltoid and my right shoulder just shrank. You could just see the socket. It was disgusting.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's when it all started, man. And that's when the whole work comp thing, I started battling work comp right off the rip because they didn't want to cover my occupational therapy. They're like, you can just do PT and you'll be fine. I'm like, listen, lady, I was not having it. I was pissed because I dealt with this lady before. And I was like, listen, I didn't just show up to work one day with a gunshot to my face and be like, hey, Jimmy, we're going to try and get this covered under work comp. What do you say? Yeah?
Right.
Okay. I got there at, X time, and it was almost like 24 hours later. I pulled off of, the greatest scheme of all time of work comp.
Yeah.
Approve my shit. So I went straight to my chief. I was like, listen, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I didn't come to work that day with a pre-existing gunshot wound to my face.
That'd be impressive.
And they were, right. They were super supportive. They got in contact with our HR. Our HR handled it. I got a new person, and then everything was approved from that on. I'd never had any issues.
Oh, that's nice.
But because work comp can be a pain.
Oh yeah. That's,
as you know,
not fun. No. It's not fun. Not to like make this about me in any way, shape, or form. But you telling that story and talking about it, it just kind of like reinvigorated some of those memories I have from when that happened. So I remember waking up that day, just a normal day, right? And I look at my phone and I got a text from Nick. He says, hey, did you see that Romeo?
James?
Yeah. He says, hey, did you see that Romeoville cop that was shot? He's like, have you talked to Dominic? And I'm like, fuck no, like I haven't talked to him this morning. Like we text, we talk on the phone every once in a while, but it's not every day, right? So I thought nothing of it, and I shot you a text. I'm like, it's not him. So I think I texted you like something about like, hey, like, heard a Romeoville cop got shot. Like, everything all right? Like, you guys good? And I'm not hearing anything. And I like started getting a little worried, because I'm like, yeah, he usually responds by now, but he might be busy with Luca, whatever. I got to go to PT. And I was in the middle of PT, and I like still hadn't heard anything. And I'm talking to Lauren, and she's like, just shoot Alyssa a message. So I shot your wife a message, heard nothing. And I'm like, okay, this is starting to not look good. And then finally she texts or messages me back, and she's like, yeah, he got shot. He's intubated. We don't really know what his status is. I'm like, fuck. So I updated Lauren, and she was going to leave work, but her charge nurse said, what, are you going to go to the hospital? You can't do anything anyways. Yeah, right. She's like, no, that's okay. Fuck my husband. Only his like best friend since kindergarten right now is fighting for his life. Let me just go let him be on his own.
Right.
But yeah, no, I just made me think about that. And like, I can only imagine what your family went through in that situation.
Oh man.
Only imagine.
And I say this all the time. Like I really don't get emotional over it. I only get emotional over it when I think about how my family or what my family had to go through, like my mom and my dad and my wife. That's, one of the worst things you could ever possibly get out of it is getting called or getting someone coming to your door in the middle of the night, which they did for Alyssa, and say, we don't know what happened. Your husband's shot. He's in critical condition. He's being airlifted to Loyola. We don't know what happened.
Right.
And I really want Alyssa to tell that story because again, I didn't experience it, so I don't know, but I couldn't imagine what she was going through, or my mom when they see me being like taken off of the helicopter because they were told nothing at the time.
Yeah.
They came up to Alyssa and they said, hey, they just landed. Do you want to go see him? And Alyssa said she was panicking, and she looked over at my mom and she saw my mom's face. And I know my mom's like, please let me go see him. And she's like, can my mother-in-law come with me? And she said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they saw me, and I was covered in blood, man. My beard was caked in blood. My face was caked in blood, and I was intubated. What gave them a peace of mind was those freaking helicopter pilots in that life flight, man. They got off. They're like, man, he's doing good. Like he did well the whole ride. They put him at ease. I think it really kind of like settled them down. But man, just the emotions. I think about Luca. I mean, yeah. I bring Luca to the ER sometimes, because they're sick, XYZ, and when they stick him with like a needle for an IV, I get super queasy. I couldn't imagine seeing him the way my mom saw me,
right,
or my wife.
Dude, I almost fought an ER nurse when she was trying to stick Reese. I was ready to punch her.
Right. Because those little kids' veins are so small, right? And it's hard to get
she
them.
Had no business doing what she was doing, but we're not going to get into that.
Oh, dude, I
don't want to shit on a nurse.
Some of them are very, very good. Some of them should be.
Yeah. Some of them should be behind a desk somewhere.
Right. So that's when I actually get emotional is that's, when they have to see me like that. That's when it really kind of fucked me up.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I can't totally imagine, but I could somewhat understand that sentiment.
So, I mean, that then became the battle of how do I get back to whole and go to all these doctor visits. And I couldn't have done it without her because my memory at the time was, it's still bad from, I don't know if it's from the trauma or it's from the TBI, I don't know, but it's still, I'm super forgetful. I don't remember when Colin came to see me in the hospital, which is one of my other really good friends.
That was the ketamine.
That was the ketamine talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she came to every single visit with me. She took all the notes. She asked all the questions that need to be asked. And, I'm still extremely grateful for her because I wouldn't be where I'm at without her either.
So how have you gone about getting yourself mentally right from this incident? So I would assume you've dealt with a lot of dark stuff dealing with this. Right?
I still do. Every now and then you feel like you get over it, but you don't. It just sticks with you. I remember waking up in cold sweats, thinking someone's going to try and kill me or kill my family. Someone's trying to break into my house. I went through a phase. It was bad. I put cameras on the exterior of my house, Ring cameras, so I could check in the middle of the night. Any thump, bump, anything like that freaked me out. I always thought someone was coming to kill me. And it really played on my mental psyche for sure. And it put me down in the dumps, man. Like they said, there's a possibility that I might not get function on my right arm ever again until they can do further testing. And that's when the whole mad scramble of research, like, what do we do?
Right.
Where do we go? I called the doctor that put my shoulder back together. He used to do surgeries for professional sports teams like the White Sox, and Dr. Burra out of it's out of Silver Cross, Hinsdale Orthopedics. That's it. And I was like, hey, do you know anyone that specializes or can you do it? And he goes, the only person that I recommend is Dr. Coe out of Northwestern. And we took it and we ran, man. And I literally, they say there's a 6-month window to where you can repair nerves.
Okay.
Before it's permanent, or you get like there's a massive reduction in function. So we got a hold of him. I went to my main doctor because you only go to so many doctors with workman comp.
Right.
So I had him write me a referral, and we finally got in, and he finally saw me, and he ran a bunch of tests. He was worried that my C5 root was damaged because during the MRI you really couldn't see it.
Yeah,
due to this, it turned out to be due to the scar tissue.
Yeah.
So his original plan for me was he was going to take the nerve from my lat. And when you take the nerve from a muscle, the muscle atrophies and dies.
Right.
So his original plan was to open up the scaling muscle in my neck, cut it permanently to open up the flow, cut my pec minor, open up the flow, open up pathways in my forearm, elbow, underneath my elbow. He was going to take part of my tricep and bring it to my deltoid, the lat to the deltoid, and then they were planning on taking a nerve from my leg and reinforcing my C5 root.
Jesus.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to be able to throw a football to my kid. I'm never going to be able to have function in my right arm ever again. It freaked me out. And I was like, listen, doc, you can't take my lat. I'm going to look like an idiot. I was like, is there any way, you can go in and figure? He's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. He said, we'll do an exploration of your C5 root because we can't get a clear picture. If it's fine, I'm only going to take your tricep. If it's not, he's like, I'm going to do the rest. I was like, I completely understand. I trust you. He's one of the, he's a plastic surgeon, honestly, he is.
Yeah.
But he's so good at it that the day he did my surgery, that he flew out to South Korea to give a conference on nerve transfers. And he has a study going right now about nerve transfers. Yeah, he's top notch, man. So it was supposed to go in and be like a 5-hour-ish surgery. If he didn't have to do it, it took him 10 hours.
Jesus.
Yeah. So what had ended up happening, he did all those things, cut my scaling muscle, cut the pec minor, opened up my forearm, all that stuff, and then cut me from the back of my shoulder all the way down to my tricep, took part of my tricep and attached it.
Okay.
And that's where I'm at now. And he, after the surgery, after a few visits, he's like, go nuts.
Oh, shit.
So in my mind, it was a challenge of I will do everything I possibly can. And I mean, after the shooting, it really changed my whole aspect on life.
Yeah.
It really did. Of how delicate it is, all that stuff with my kid. It really changed everything for me. And I think probably for the better. Maybe I'm a little, obsessive over it now of punishing myself.
Yeah.
But I refuse to be a victim. I refuse to be let that define me of who I am as a person. And I will do everything in my power to try to get my right shoulder to 100% that I possibly can. And I think in a way it's working out for me because I've really gained a lot of strength back in my right shoulder. I went from not being able to lift my hand over my head to lifting some actually decent weight with my right arm.
Yeah. Well, you talked about like warrior mentality and stuff, and that's kind of all plays into it, like, yeah, not everybody can come back from that stuff. You got to have a certain mindset to come back from that.
And I want to touch on that because I think that's what saved my life. Yeah. You always hear, I remember going to a training and this guy saying there was an officer who was shot in the hand and he thought he was going to die and he died. I had to look into it, the whole research, all that stuff. I don't know if that was a true story, but that's what he said. So that's all I thought was mind over matter. And I think, honestly, that's what saved my life because I should have bled out and died.
Yeah. No, it plays a huge role. I mean, like there's that will to live, warrior mentality, all that stuff. It plays a really big role.
I think so too. And I think that's another part of this, why I want to get my story out there.
Yeah.
Is you have to have that warrior. If you're in law enforcement or you're in the military, you have to have that. I'm going to live at all costs. I will not.
Screw
I'm
us
not
firemen, I guess.
Well, I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you guys as well, man. If you get stuck in a fire, I'm sure there's shitty situations you guys put in. But
bust your balls.
But I mean, at all costs. I mean, that's my mentality from now on, and that I have to have that warrior mentality. And it always goes back to that Jocko, thing I sent you a while back of, him talking about his employee, and every time something goes wrong, he goes, good.
Yeah, right.
Good. They're going to take my tricep. Good. I have to go through therapy.
I didn't like
good.
it anyways.
I'm not going to have 100% of my right shoulder back. Good. I'll prove you fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I will bounce back from this physically 100%. I'm not going to regrow my vertebral artery, but if I can control something and it's in my control, I will make sure that I get it done.
Yeah. So talked a lot about the getting back physically. We brushed on mentally. What are some things you've done to get back mentally?
I see a therapist once a week.
Yeah.
And I wasn't open to it at first, but she came to me in the hospital when I was in the hospital. She came and spoke with Alyssa and I stuck with her ever since. She, you always have that mentality of, or that mindset of, this is stupid. This isn't going to work.
Right.
But I let myself believe it was going to work. And I think that's another thing that kind of shaped me of, I'll try it. Why not? What's it going to hurt? Is it going to hurt my pride? I don't give a fuck about my pride anymore.
I already got shot.
Right.
I got no pride left.
Exactly. So it's like, I'm going to build myself back. And how am I going to build myself back physically if I can't build myself back mentally?
Yeah.
And I've been through those dark times of hating yourself. And what I do is I try to take that self-hate and I try to take it out while I go to the gym. Like you little piece of S, like, you can't lift this. Okay, let's get after it. Let's try it. Let's fail. I'm going to fail and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to just abuse myself.
Yeah. Do you have like a workout that you do that like makes you quicker at dodging bullets?
No, if I did, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in. But yeah, that mental, man, I mean, it's a huge part of it. I mean, honestly, It's probably about 75% because the last 25% is all physical. It's all mental. It really is. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. And I that sounds cliche and all that stuff, but it's true, man. It really is.
I believe it.
I can't control it. Why am I going to sit and dwell on it and just let it fester? I'm not going to do that.
I believe it.
I mean, I know after the pain, I remember talking to Alyssa, she goes, you were an asshole. And I didn't mean to, but it was just constant pain. And it really messed with me. And I was acting out in certain ways or little things that would set me off, and it shouldn't. But
yeah,
she, you know, my therapist really, Dr. Steiner really got me through it. She explained to me why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I think that really kind of helped me, because then it's let me sit back and be like, okay, I'm doing this because of this, right? That's why. Yeah. Well, let's take a second. Let's breathe. Let's calm down, reset, recenter, and then get back after it.
Right.
And I mean, I went through those dark times, man, of like, I'm never going to be the same. And you go to that dark place of, I'm better off just not being here, and everyone else is better off not being here. I've been down that road plenty of times.
Right.
But what I think got me through that as well is Ben. If I do take my own life, what's that going to do to everybody else?
You saw how far reaching it affects people.
Destroys everyone around you. Right. Destroys them. And then what did I just do? I just took, I'm fighting so hard to be here. I fought so hard to be here with my family, and then I take my own life. I can't do that. They deserve better.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that really helped me through that time period. And I'm still going through it, man. I still wake up every morning sometimes like, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to work on my shoulder. I don't want to do this. And being in work comp, or being in that disabled period of filing for that medical pension, which I finally had to do, which was another hard decision for me. But you feel alienated, and then it's not intentional by any means. All my guys and girls from the police department, they're all phenomenal. They would reach out to me, but you feel alone because you're home, and it's like you said it too. It's like Groundhog's Day. How you doing, man? Same shit every day, man.
Yep.
Wake up, do this. Wake up, do that.
Yep.
And you get lost, and you can get lost so easy. And caught up in all of it, man.
Oh yeah.
And it could just destroy you.
Oh yeah. That aspect, I can totally understand where you're coming from.
And
there's a lot of this that I don't understand just because I'm not in those shoes, but that aspect I do.
Right. So, and I think that's what really, on top of everything, it really pushed me to where we are now.
Yeah.
Where a lot of self-reflecting, punishing myself to get better, to do better. And I'm like, maybe this is something that other people need to hear.
Right.
And, I was told to do public speaking, all that stuff. I feel like this is the way where what I have to offer and people can learn from me, what people can learn from you, I think could help people in our field, not even our field, but even the military branches, where there's still hope. This isn't the end. This is a new chapter in my life. And I had to come to that conclusion when I filed for my medical paperwork finally, where I tried to come back, and I told everyone I was coming back because I wanted to come back, because if something happened to, Jimmy or any of those guys and I wasn't there, how could I live with myself?
Yeah,
but then I had to ask myself too, if I get put into that position with the things that I've been through, can I still respond the same way? Can I still do my job the same way mentally?
Exactly.
And I doubted myself. And if I'm doubting myself, what good am I doing? I'm only going to be a hindrance on them and what they need to do.
Yeah. No, I like that point right there. That's really what led me to being like, oh.
Well, you can definitely tell we're brand new at this. Also,
amateur. So if you're watching this, we're kind of flying in autopilot mode. We lost our producer a couple weeks ago. We've had a rough start to this, right? So I was going to slide into the producer mode, but we wanted to do an interview and tell each of our stories. So we figured the best case would be both of us sitting here, right? So
set it and forget it.
Yeah, hit record and said, send it. Didn't realize that the one phone was not plugged in. So at some point, we lost that video.
I don't think it was that deep. I guess we'll find out a little later, though.
Who knows? I don't even know. But we're not going to redo this. So we're sending it.
Full send, baby. Full send.
I don't know where we're at, but yeah.
So yeah, just I think that whole aspect of us trying to figure out where our next chapter is, and that's when I reached out to you and I wanted to create this podcast because I feel like people could learn from what we've been through. And I mean, honestly, I feel like there's a bunch of things that we can offer and give the audience to kind of take into perspective of their own lives.
Right. Like not the amount of people, but like the people we want to have on and adding them to that mix and like their stories and
right.
I don't know. It's one of those things where if you hear other people's way of dealing with things or stuff that other people have been through, it just kind of puts a lot of things into perspective for you.
Sure.
And it's kind of like, I know you mentioned to me, you go through like a group therapy after you're shooting. And it's kind of like that, we're not here in a group, but it's kind of like that same idea.
For sure. And I mean, this kind of goes back to a new chapter, right? Where
100%.
I had to file for my medical pension, and it was probably one of the hardest decisions that I had to make, but that goes back to what capacity that I could still perform the job.
Right.
And I can't with the whole missing artery, getting dizzy, PTSD, all that stuff. So it's so easy to let yourself just spiral out of control and, abuse substances, all that stuff to self-medicate, or, we can move on and learn from what you've been through, what I've been through, and, create something special. Like, you talked about before, we can document people's lives.
100%.
And I think that's what our future is going to entail.
Yeah. Hopefully. God willing.
Yeah.
God willing.
100%, man.
But I think this is a good time to wrap it up.
It is a good time to wrap it up.
I know there's...
Before we fuck up anything else.
Right. Definitely areas I wanted to get into more, but
yeah,
you know what? Gives people a chance to learn about us as we go through this process of this learning this podcast thing.
100%. And we're going to have a bunch of really interesting guests on that I'm actually really excited for. We're going to have a bunch of people on that's going to really just not even from like law enforcement perspective, but maybe like the therapist perspective, or people who work the ER, or people who work in hospitals.
Yeah.
Military members. I mean, we have two guests that are coming up here that I'm actually extremely stoked for. I'm really excited to read that book and get into that. And I think you guys are really going to love what this guy has to offer and his aspect on life.
Yeah,
and he
sure.
went through hell and back, and the way he came out on top, I mean, is an inspiration to myself for sure.
100%. When I was talking to him, he said when he was younger, he didn't talk about things. And as he got older, he kind of realized, you can't keep it in. You got to talk. So he wrote this book. And it's kind of funny because you and I said the same thing. When he was writing the book, we were having this conversation. He goes, I figured if I publish this book and it helps one person, it was worth it.
Every penny.
And I was having this conversation with him, and it was just like a flashback because you and I had just had that conversation,
Yep.
So
that's what I told Alyssa though. Like being on work comp, all this stuff, financially it's tight. It's extremely tight.
Yeah.
And buying all this equipment wasn't cheap. And financially it's a burden, but
yeah, right.
You said it best, man. Like if we can save one person or help one person, it's going to make everything worth it. And, these some of those individuals that we're talking to now, which they feel that they have the same passion we have of helping people. And, with the QRF Up app, I mean, man, I'm excited to work with those guys. I'm excited to get that information
100%.
out there for everybody. And I think we have a pretty bright future ahead of us, buddy.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. But either way, thank you guys for tuning in and going beyond the dispatch with us.
Until next time.
Take care.